Man Died, a memoir written by the Nobel laureate Wole Soyinka. It is set to be released as a feature film directed by Awam Amba, and it will be available for lovers of this piece to watch in July this year. Now, to give it context, during the Nigeria Civil War in the late 1960s, Wole Soyinka's outspoken criticisms of the authorities' action during the war landed him in prison for 22 months by the Nigerian military government. Then in 1972, he then published a memoir, a chronicle of his experiences in prison, which explored very, very important themes: survival, perseverance, and most importantly, resilience. Wale Ojo is playing Wole Soyinka in this body of work, and we have the trailer. Take a look.
You held up a radio station with a gun.
Hey, stop that thing.
Now you are in bed with Ojukwu. Why?
I think we need a group of new entrants into this war, so that we can neutralize the two combatants. Absolutely. A third force that will work in terms of a compromise for the people.
Wale, speak all the grammar you want, but this is not the way to go about it.
So what will you have me do, Bola? I have a message that could end this war and bring about peace.
Supporting the evils against this nation does not look like a decision an intelligent Yoruba man like you should make. Because
when a people have been subjected to a degree of inhuman violation for which there's no other word but genocide, I believe very strongly that they have a right to seek an identity apart from their aggressors.
You know, when I see you fighting each other, and then the warders fighting you and you fighting each other, you know what I see? I see this nation. Have you heard the story about the red ants and the black ants in the jar? You know, they're all going about their business, doing their thing, until someone shakes the jar. And then the ants, they start to fight each other. Now, why the red and black ants are fighting is a secondary issue. The urgent question is, who shook the bloody jar?
Well, joining me now on Arise 360, Femi Odugbemi, working, of course, on this upcoming film commemoration. I'm really excited about this project, Femi. Just to clarify, you worked on the project as a producer on it, correct?
Yes. I was a producer of the film.
I'm deeply honored to have you on the show, especially because you're the founder and director of the I Present International Documentary Film Festival and a voting member of the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences with regards to the, Academy of Television, the Oscars. Because I feel like some people might just be like, what's she talking about? The Oscars. So, it's great. It's great to have you on the show. Let's get into this project. First of all, at what point was it decided that there was going to be a film about this memoir?
Well, first of all, thank you, Kachi, for having me here. And I'm very excited to talk about this project because I think it's one of the signposts of how much our industry is beginning to help us with the cultural, how shall I say it, in bringing to this generation the cultural history of our country, the political history of our country. If you notice now in Nollywood, there's a lot of book-to-screen projects going on, and I'm very excited that this particular one, The Man Died, is now a film, because I think it makes the story and this moment in our history accessible to this generation, and that's very important because I think the gap in our history has created a situation where our public conversations are lacking the necessary background, the necessary understanding for them to actually be progressive. So yes, I'm very excited that The Man Died is now a feature film, and why now is the question. First of all, it's going to be in the 90th birthday of Professor Wole Soyinka, and I think quite a lot of young people have come in contact with his name and his personality without quite understanding his antecedents. And I think this film does a world of good to bring that to the table. The concept of resistance, the idea of an artist standing up for something fundamental, like, humanism, freedom of speech, respect for human rights. All of that is really what he represents. And this book is an account, a very personal account of him trying to mediate, trying to avoid war, and doing that at the risk of his own life and being put in prison. And for him to do that as far back as 1967 is an important story to tell for this generation, for the future generation, as we all, learn how our art and our creativity and our storytelling and talents can actually be brought to be significant and impactful in real terms for history, for our country, for development. So for me, that's really why this is so exciting and so important that we've managed to make this into the feature film.
I mean, for one, I'm very grateful for literature in our secondary school curriculums, because a lot of times the first exposure that individuals have to works like this would be, in that sense, literature, whether it is at the primary level or secondary level, depending on the particular institution. I know of another book that's a very popular piece within literature, Passport of Malam Ilya, that's equally being made, into a film. But now, speaking of this history and its lack thereof in our society, because you rightly said something, for this new generation, it's possible that they may or may not have even heard of this body of work before, and this will be that first introduction into it. How important is it to create these avenues? I spoke to, I had a guest on the show once, and he called it he called it almost a lazy attempt to spoon feed the new generation these literal pieces. What's your take on that? The importance of feeding these works to the new generation, but at the same time preserving the integrity of the original pieces, which could be painstakingly having to read, which is not something a lot of people would want to do.
Well, I always like to clarify that it's wrong to say this generation does not read. This generation is constantly reading. They're reading off of their tablets. They're reading off of their devices. This is probably the generation that has read the most. The question is, what is the format or the platform of transmitting information to them? And it's more visual now. You have to be more visual now. I think beyond entertainment, film and television and content and the motion picture has become more important to this generation as where they get their body of information. And they use it for entertainment, they use it for education, they use it, for spiritual development. So for me, what's important is not that they're reading a book. What's important is that we are finding ways to pass on information generationally. And that's really what I think happens when we're able to take, a book, whether it's fiction or non-fiction, and we're able to translate it to cinema. Now, it's important to say as well that, making a film out of a book is not a translation of the book, really. It's an interpretation of the story. And for us, especially The Man Died, we say it is inspired by the prison memoirs of Professor Wole Soyinka of the same title. It takes its beginning from that book, but it expands to accommodate into the storytelling bits and pieces from his other works as well that help us better sort of shape out his personality. I think that this film is far more comprehensive than the narrow narration of just him in prison. Because if we had done just that, the film would be stuck in just the size, the small rooms that were his home for 3 years. He was in solitary confinement for 3 years, and unless we're able to create a structure for the story such that we're able to introduce who he is, his concept of governance, of life itself, how he could go from being a lecturer in a university for literature to someone who was very interested in governance. He was interested in how people were protected. He was interested in ensuring that, there was no war. The Biafran War was not something he saw, that it was a no-win situation. And they put him in prison was because he defied the Nigerian government's ban on contacting Biafra. He needed to go to Biafra to be able to try to negotiate some kind of ceasefire, which and to create a balance of logic such that there will be no war. But what was the reason he was fighting against war? It was to prevent the over 2 million people that would ultimately die in that war. That's 2 million minds that Nigeria lost. At the end of the war, both sides claimed there was no victor, no vanquish. And so you ask yourself, then what was the meaning of the death of 2 million people? But it took an artist, it took a poet, it took, someone like Wole Soyinka to see that this was not something that had a good conclusion. And he saw that long before a shot was fired. That's the power of the artist. And I hope that's what people see when they watch The Man Died. That as an artist, when you embrace your power, you are able to actually create imagination engineering such that it affects everything about life itself, about your community, about your nation.
Absolutely. Now, in 1986, he won the Nobel Prize for Literature for this work. I think the most interesting thing, there are too many interesting things, but one of the most interesting things about this amongst the two works that he did while he was in solitary confinement was how he wrote it on toilet paper and smuggled it, out of prison. And it makes me then wonder, solitary confinement, in a way, because I assume that you must have had conversations, with Wole Soyinka on this. Would you say, in a way, it's had a way of bringing these pieces out of him? In a way that those 22 months were such that he had such deep moments within himself, deep private moments within himself. And then it also teaches us as individuals, do we all sometimes just need to have these moments to bring out certain things out of us?
I absolutely agree. I think that what was clear, and you'll see it in this film, is that, his time in prison forced him into a journey of deep reflections, not just reflections about his own life, but reflections about the meaning of life itself, reflections about how we relate to each other as humans, reflections on what society, how society is governed, how do we create systems and societies that allow humans to be kind to each other. I think all of that was also forced upon him because his life was constantly in danger. While he was in jail, it was important for him to be very wary of the food that they served. So he was actually also on something of an hunger strike for quite a long time. He barely just managed to come out of that place with both his mind and his health intact. But I think it takes an artist well aware of his own power to understand that situation as an opportunity to grow his philosophy of life, an opportunity to actually interrogate what the meaning of his journey is, and to use that art, whether it was poetry, whether it was he was writing a memoir, not to waste that period of his life. I mean, you must generally imagine how tedious it must have been to write a story or information on toilet paper, but to actually even smuggle it out of the prison itself. I think those are one of the things that I hope people come and find, come and watch in the film, how he was able to create systems within the prison system, to actually find collaborators within the spaces where he was actually a captive, and to be able to reach out to his network with the work that he was doing. He did not waste a moment on self-pity. He continued to think about, globally about the community, about the nation. He carried a burden for the war itself. And so for me, that he has been consistent with that thinking before prison, through prison, and then for these many years. This will be his 90th birthday, and he has been in front of the resistance movement, active, for upwards of 50, 60 years. I think he himself, whether he's writing or he's not writing, his whole life stands almost as a monument to resistance, a monument to, our capacity to sacrifice for the best system that preserves all our humanity. And I think that's really why this film is so important now, because I think the country is going through a time where the next generation is beginning to assert itself. And in that assertion, it's important for them to know that the journey of resistance is not a 100-meter dash. It's a long, drawn-out marathon. It's drudgery, and it involves sacrifice. Sometimes, people die. People are imprisoned. People are beaten. Abacha almost killed him. All of that comes with you understanding why, as the subject of this film, it's almost a film any Nigerian cannot afford to miss.
I couldn't agree with you more. Like, his stand on the universality rather and indivisibility of freedom and human rights, it was uncompromising, quite honestly. And now, speaking of the next generation, how do you think this film is going to steer a lot of people in that direction towards just having an uncompromising, indivisible stance? If you're here, this is what you believe in, stay here. And also expressing this stance, the best way to go about expressing this belief, especially in the political system that we have today.
Well, I believe that there was a moment when we had the SARS protests. There was a moment there where I think we saw into the soul of Nigeria's next generation. Our next generation are instinctively desirous of a better country, of better systems, desirous of a country that works. And I think it's that awareness, that's woken something in them that I think has extended to these immediate last elections. And for me, I hope that, this film represents to them a roadmap of how resistance itself requires a large well of determination and patriotism. One of the things that's very important is that very early in his career, Wole Soyinka embraced embraced Nigeria and the responsibility that he had to be part of its evolution. He had opportunity to live abroad. He could have taught abroad. He was always someone who would have been embraced anywhere that he wanted to be. But he chose to be in Nigeria because he felt as a young man that he had a responsibility to be part of how this thing called Nigeria was set on a path of development, growth, and he was willing to sacrifice his career for that. But what's important is that he was also willing to keep his vision, 2020, regardless of what was happening in the environment. And I think that's really the message from him to this generation of democracy, pursuing resistance, leading the generation next. I think it's important to see in him that determination, that capacity not to be corrupted, that constantly keeping the better good of the country as the ultimate goal. I think is always important for that journey to be authentic. Wole Soyinka represents that, and it represents the many things that can happen in that journey: the sacrifice, the loss, the pain. Of course, he was fundamentally changed coming out of prison because he was a human being up against a system. As that system evolved since, I think so. The mere presence of Wole Soyinka with us creates a certain dynamic when governments are thinking of policy, when they are thinking of a certain kind of behavior that might take the rights of people away. I think it's amazing that, at age 80, 90, he's still writing poems that fight for, Shaibu and Leah and the kidnapped Chibok girls. He's still fighting for journalists that were, harassed. It's something that's clearly a commitment that is lifelong. And that's really what I hope we all see as what it's going to take for us to build a country. We're not going to build a country from behind the keyboards of a social media account. We're not going to build a country because we have data. We're going to build a country because we're all willing and ready and patriotic enough to roll up our sleeves and get our hands dirty.
I love the fact that you mentioned not building a country from behind the keyboard, because I was going to say that I just imagine what the story would be like if it was at a time where there was the prevalence of social media, because like you rightly mentioned with NSAS, one of the factors that really pushed the entire knowledge and narrative of everything that happened, every single thing that happened, was the awareness that was created through the social media platforms. And I just imagine with Wole Soyinka, what would the man died? What would that story be if it happened at a time where social media was at its prevalence as it is now? But obviously, for a film like this, casting could not have been an easy journey. It must have been one of the most daunting parts of this entire project. So what yardsticks were put in place with regards to selecting, for instance, the lead character, who would be Wole Ojo?
Well, for me, it was not really about whether the characters we were selecting, looked like him. It was about selecting people who could bring to the table the essence of the man, the essence of people in his world, and the essence of the system that they came up against. I think at the end of the day, what we were very happy with, and which I think is going to be an amazing experience for viewers of this film, is the sheer power and authenticity that all the characters in this film bring to the table. I think it was, first and foremost, a material that demanded from them.
This is not the way to go about it.
So what will you have me do, Bola?
For me, the cream of the crop of Nigerian Nigerian film industry, and they all came to the table in a powerful way. Yeah.
Sorry, I lost you for a moment, and I feel like I lost you at the point where you were just speaking to the casting process for this film. So if you just, we lost you at the point where you mentioned it was not about the looks, you know, for selecting Wale Ojo to play this role. So if you could just pick up from there, thank you very much.
Well, the truth is Wale Ojo is an amazing actor. And I think the more important thing was that the character that he was going to play is a larger-than-life character. I mean, who does not tremble at the concept of playing Wale Soyinka? I think that was really the key. That Wale Ojo brought a healthy respect to the opportunity to play Wale Soyinka. He brought to it a lot of research, but he also spent time with Professor Wale Soyinka. I think that was very important. He came to Nigeria many weeks ahead of our filming, and he spent time with him. He read with him. He was able to get a sense of you know, that magic, that presence that you feel when you are with Prof. And I think that was transmitted in the film, because he brings an amazing performance to the table. But it was an ensemble cast. I think it's important that people come and watch this film and see, you know, the powerful performances of amazing people, you know, Sam Dede, Norbert Young, Francis Onwuche, Rocco Ewenla, Simi Hassan, Edmond Enaibe, and of course people like Sergio Guidon. There was just a lot of amazing actors who came to, they came to bring everything to the table. Principally, one, out of the respect for the story itself, and also out of understanding that this film was much more than a movie for entertainment. I believe it's an important national artifact that, you know, speaks to a moment in our history that is so vital to pass on to generation next.
I couldn't agree with you more, and I think that's the best way to land on this conversation. Thank you so much, Femi. I really appreciate this moment we've had with you on the show and this incredibly insightful conversation. I, for one, am looking forward to the film's release. Do we have a specific day in July, or we're still up in the air on that one?
Absolutely. Well, the film will be premiered on the 12th of July. We will put out information as to where people can see it, but we're very excited to say we intend to have it in the film houses and also, of course, streaming platforms. We also intend to have an educational tour with the film where it goes into, you know, university spaces and places where people can also, you know, kind of see history and appropriate that accordingly.
Fantastic. Femi Odugbemi, this has been my pleasure. Thank you so much for joining me on Arise 360 today.